Marcus Williams stood in the long line at Denver International Airport, checking his phone for the third time in 5 minutes, as the time showed 2:15 p.m., and his flight to Chicago was supposed to board at 2:30 p.m. He felt his heart beating fast. As he thought about the next day, tomorrow morning, he would stand in front of the Chicago City Council and present his biggest project ever. This one meeting could save his small architecture company from closing down. He looked at his boarding. Pass again. C3B, first class. The ticket had cost him almost all the money he had left in his savings account. But Marcus knew he needed to arrive in Chicago feeling fresh and ready. Economy class would mean a cramped seat, no space to work, and arriving tired. He could not afford that risk. Marcus was a tall man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. At 35 years old, he had worked hard to build his architecture firm from nothing. He grew up in a small town where his family did not have much money, but his mother always told him that education and hard work would open doors. She was right. Marcus had studied hard, won scholarships, and earned his degree in architecture from a top university. But now, 3 years after starting his own company, Marcus was facing the biggest challenge of his career. The economy was tough, and many of his clients had canceled their projects. His small team of 5 employees was depending on him to find new work. The Chicago project was worth $2 million. If he got this contract, his company would survive. If he failed, he would have to close his business and let his employees go. As Marcus waited in line, he noticed people around him staring. Some looked curious. Others seemed to judge him with their eyes. Marcus was used to this. Being a successful black man in the architecture world meant he often stood out in business meetings, conferences, and even in airport lounges. He had learned to ignore the stares and focus on his goals. The gate area was crowded with travelers. Families with children sat on the floor. Business people typed on their laptops. And elderly couples shared snacks while waiting. The flight to Chicago was full, and Marcus could see that many passengers looked tired and stressed. At Gate 15A, the airline staff was getting ready for boarding. Behind the counter, Marcus could see the ground crew preparing the boarding announcement. The big screen above the gate showed that the flight was on time, which made Marcus feel a little better. He had been worried about delays because of the weather forecast. Jennifer Walsh stood at the gate counter, checking her watch and reviewing the passenger list. She had been a flight attendant for 8 years, but the last few months had been terrible for her. 3 passengers had complained about her service, and she had been passed over for promotion to senior flight attendant. Her supervisor, Mr. Peterson, had called her into his office last week for a serious talk. Jennifer, Mr. Peterson had said, "I'm getting reports that you're not showing the friendly service our passengers expect. You seem stressed and impatient with travelers. I need to see improvement, or we'll have to discuss your future with the airline." Those words had been playing in Jennifer's mind all week. She knew she was having problems at work, but everything in her personal life was going wrong too. Her boyfriend had broken up with her last month, her car needed expensive repairs, and her apartment rent had gone up. She felt like she was failing at everything. Jennifer was 32 years old, and had dreamed of being a flight attendant since she was a little girl. She loved the idea of traveling to different cities and meeting new people. But after 8 years of dealing with difficult passengers, crying babies, and demanding travelers, the job had lost its magic. She felt tired and angry most of the time. Today, Jennifer was working the first-class section of the flight to Chicago. She knew that Mr. Peterson might be watching her performance, so she was determined to be extra careful about everything. She had checked and double-checked the passenger list, the meal orders, the seating assignments. As she looked at the boarding pass scanner, Jennifer felt nervous. She had made mistakes before, and she could not afford another bad day. She decided that she would be very strict about checking tickets and making sure every passenger was in the right seat. The boarding announcement came over the loudspeaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are now ready to begin boarding flight 447 to Chicago. We will start with our first-class passengers and our Gold Elite members." Marcus gathered his carry-on bag and walked toward the gate. He had his boarding pass ready and his identification in his hand. As he approached the gate, he felt confident. He had every right to be in first class. It paid for his ticket. He was a gold elite member of the airline. He had all his documents ready. Jennifer stood at the gate entrance, scanning boarding passes as passengers walked onto the plane. She smiled at each person, but her smile felt fake and forced. She was trying to look friendly, but inside she felt anxious and worried. When Marcus reached the front of the line, he handed Jennifer his boarding pass with a polite smile. "Good afternoon," he said kindly. Jennifer took the boarding pass and looked at it quickly. She saw that it was for seat 3B in first class, but something in her mind immediately felt suspicious. She looked at Marcus again, taking in his appearance. He was well dressed in a nice suit and tie, but Jennifer's mind was filled with doubt. She had seen other passengers try to sneak into first class before. Some people would find boarding passes on the ground, or they would try to upgrade themselves without paying. Jennifer's supervisor had told her to be very careful about checking passengers, especially in first class. But there was something else influencing Jennifer's thinking. In her 8 years as a flight attendant, she had not seen many black passengers. In first class, her unconscious bias made her assume that Marcus might not belong there. Even though she had no real reason to think this, Jennifer held on to the boarding pass longer than usual, studying it carefully. Marcus waited patiently, but he began to feel uncomfortable. Other passengers were waiting behind him, and Jennifer was taking much longer than she had with other travelers. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked politely. Jennifer looked up at him, with suspicion in her eyes. "I just need to double-check something," she said. But instead of scanning the boarding pass normally, she continued to hold it and stare at Marcus. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. He had experienced discrimination before, but he hoped this would not be one of those times. He needed this flight to go smoothly. He needed to arrive in Chicago ready for the most important presentation of his career. Jennifer finally scanned the boarding pass, but she did not give it back to Marcus right away. "Follow me," she said in a cold voice. "I need to check your seat assignment." Marcus felt confused and worried as he followed Jennifer onto the plane. Other passengers were already settling into their seats, but Jennifer seemed to be treating him differently than everyone else. He hoped this was just a misunderstanding that would be cleared up quickly. But as they walked down the aisle toward first class, Marcus could feel that something was very wrong. Jennifer's behavior was making him nervous, and he could see other passengers starting to stare. The flight that was supposed to be the beginning of his big opportunity was starting to feel like the beginning of a nightmare. Marcus followed Jennifer down the narrow airplane aisle, his carry-on bag rolling behind him. The first-class section was beautiful, with wide leather seats and extra space between rows. He could see passengers already settling in, putting their bags in the overhead bins, and getting comfortable for the flight. As they reached row 3, Marcus stopped at seat 3 bites. He lifted his bag to put it in the overhead compartment, but Jennifer grabbed his arm to stop him. "Wait," Jennifer said in a loud voice. "Don't put your bag up there yet. We need to sort this out first." Marcus looked at her with confusion. "Sort what out?" "This is my seat. 3B, just like my boarding pass says." Jennifer crossed her arms and stood in the aisle, blocking other passengers who were trying to get to their seats. Her face looked angry and suspicious. "Sir, I think there's been a mistake. This is first class, and I believe your real seat is in the back of the plane." The words hit Marcus like a punch in the stomach. He could not believe what he was hearing. Several passengers in nearby seats turned to look at what was happening. Marcus felt his face getting hot with embarrassment and anger. "Excuse me," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice calm. "There's no mistake. I bought this first-class ticket myself. Here's my boarding pass." He held out the boarding pass again. But Jennifer barely looked at it. She was convinced in her mind that Marcus was trying to trick her. In her 8 years as a flight attendant, she had seen passengers try to sneak into first class before. She thought Marcus was doing the same thing. "Sir, sometimes people get confused about their seat numbers," Jennifer said loudly, making sure other passengers could hear every word. "Economy seats can have similar numbers to first-class seats. I think you need to check your ticket again and find your real seat in the back." Marcus felt like the whole world was watching him. An elderly woman in seat 3A was staring at him with wide eyes. A businessman in seat 4B had stopped reading his newspaper to watch the drama. Even passengers walking down the aisle slowed down to see what was happening. Ma'am, I can promise you that this is my correct seat, Marcus said, his voice getting a little stronger. I am not confused. I know exactly where I belong on this airplane. But Jennifer was not listening. She had made up her mind that Marcus was lying, and nothing he said would change her opinion. Her supervisor's warning about being more careful with passengers was playing in her head. She thought this was her chance to show that she was doing her job well. Look, sir, Jennifer said, her voice getting even louder. There are other passengers waiting to board, and you're holding up the whole process. Please gather your things and move to your assigned seat in economy class. Marcus looked around the first-class cabin. He could see the shock and discomfort on other passengers' faces. Some people looked angry at Jennifer's behavior. Others seemed embarrassed to be watching such an awful scene. The elderly woman in seat 3A leaned over to her husband and whispered, "This is terrible. That poor man clearly belongs here." But she spoke quietly because she did not want to get involved in the confrontation. Marcus took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. His mother had always taught him that when people treat you badly, you should respond with dignity and respect. Even when others are wrong, you should try to be the better person. "Ma'am, I understand you're trying to do your job," Marcus said in a quiet, respectful voice. "But I need you to look at my boarding pass more carefully. I need you to check your passenger list. You will see that Marcus Williams is assigned to seat 3B in first class." Jennifer snatched the boarding pass from his hand and pretended to study it, but she was not really reading it. Her mind was already made up. She was sure that Marcus was trying to fool her, and she was determined not to let that happen. "Sir, I've looked at your boarding pass and I still think there's a problem," Jennifer lied. "These documents can be fake sometimes. People print fake boarding passes to try to get free upgrades." Marcus could not believe what he was hearing. Jennifer was now accusing him of having fake documents. His hands started to shake with anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Are you saying that I created a fake boarding pass?" Marcus asked, his voice still quiet, but now filled with hurt. "Are you accusing me of being a criminal?" Other passengers were getting more and more uncomfortable. A woman in seat 2A started recording the scene with her phone. She could see that something very wrong was happening. She wanted to have evidence of it. Jennifer noticed the phone and felt a moment of doubt. Maybe she was making a mistake. But she had already gone too far to back down now. She felt trapped by her own bad decisions. "I'm not accusing you of anything," Jennifer said, even though that was exactly what she was doing. "I'm just saying that mistakes happen, and I think you need to double-check your seat assignment." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Jennifer his mobile boarding pass. The screen clearly showed his name, the flight number, and seat 3B. Also showed her his airline app, which displayed his Gold Elite status with the airline. "As you can see," Marcus said, "everything is correct. I am Marcus Williams. This is Flight 447 to Chicago. My seat is 3B. I am a Gold Elite member of this airline, which means I fly with you frequently, and I know how airplane seating works." Jennifer looked at the phone screen, but she was too proud and stubborn to admit her mistake. She had been wrong from the beginning, but now she felt like she had to prove she was right, even though she knew she was not. "Sir, anyone can fake information on a phone," Jennifer said desperately. "I need to see your driver's license and credit card to prove that you really bought this ticket." Marcus was shocked by this request. No flight attendant had ever asked him to show his credit card before. This was getting more and more ridiculous, and he could see that other passengers were getting angry at Jennifer's behavior. "This is unacceptable," said the businessman in seat 4B. "I've been flying for 20 years, and I've never seen a flight attendant treat a passenger like this." The elderly woman in seat 3A nodded in agreement. "Young man," she said to Marcus, "you're handling this with remarkable grace. This lady should be ashamed of herself." But Jennifer was beyond shame now. She was panicking because she realized she might be wrong, but she did not know how to fix the situation without looking foolish. Instead of apologizing and admitting her mistake, she decided to double down on her bad behavior. I'm going to need everyone to mind their own business, Jennifer snapped at the other passengers. This is between me and this gentleman, and I know how to do my job. Marcus felt humiliated and angry, but he also felt sorry for Jennifer. He could see that she was making a terrible mistake that would probably get her in serious trouble. I wished she would just look at the facts and realize that he belonged in first class. But Jennifer was not ready to listen to facts. She was about to make the situation much, much worse. Marcus could feel his heart pounding as he stood in the airplane aisle. The situation was getting worse by the minute, and he knew he had to stay calm no matter what happened. He had worked too hard to get where he was in life to let one person's bad behavior destroy his reputation. "Ma'am, I will show you my driver's license," Marcus said quietly, reaching for his wallet. "But I want you to know that no other flight attendant has ever asked me to prove I bought my own ticket." Jennifer watched as Marcus pulled out his wallet. She was hoping to find some proof that he was lying, but deep down, she was starting to worry that she had made a terrible mistake. Still, she could not back down now. Too many people were watching. Marcus handed Jennifer his driver's license. The name matched his boarding pass perfectly. Marcus Williams. The address was in Denver, which made sense since that was where the flight had started. Everything looked completely normal and legal. Jennifer stared at the license for a long time, hoping to find something wrong with it. But it was clearly real. The photo matched Marcus's face. The information was consistent, and there were no signs that it was fake. "Now, show me your credit card," Jennifer demanded. "I want to see the card. You used to buy this ticket?" Marcus felt his anger growing, but he controlled it. He pulled out his credit card and showed it to Jennifer. Again, the name matched perfectly. Marcus Williams was clearly printed on the card, just like on his driver's license and boarding pass. The elderly woman in seat 3A could not stay quiet anymore. "Young lady," she said to Jennifer, "this is absolutely ridiculous. This gentleman has shown you everything you asked for. He clearly belongs in this seat." Her husband nodded in agreement. "In 50 years of flying, I have never seen such poor treatment of a passenger. You should be ashamed of yourself." Other passengers began speaking up too. The businessman in seat 4B stood up and said, "This is discrimination, plain and simple. I'm going to report this to the airline as soon as we land." A woman in seat 2A, who had been recording everything on her phone, said, "I'm posting this video on social media. People need to see how this airline treats its customers." Jennifer felt panic rising in her chest. She could see that all the passengers were turning against her. She knew she was probably wrong about Marcus, but now she felt trapped. If she admitted her mistake, she would look foolish in front of everyone. If she kept fighting, things might get even worse. "Everyone, please stay out of this," Jennifer said loudly. "I am trained to handle security situations, and I know what I'm doing." But Marcus could see that Jennifer was not in control anymore. She was making bad decisions because she was scared and embarrassed. He decided to try a different approach. "Ma'am, what is your name?" Marcus asked gently. "Jennifer Walsh," she answered automatically. "Jennifer, my name is Marcus Williams. I am an architect from Denver. Tomorrow morning, I have to present a very important project to the Chicago City Council. I saved money for months to buy this first-class ticket because I need to arrive in Chicago ready to do my best work." Marcus spoke in a calm, kind voice, trying to help Jennifer understand that he was just a normal person trying to travel to an important meeting. "I am not trying to cause trouble," Marcus continued. "I am not trying to get something for free. I just want to sit in the seat that I paid for and fly to Chicago peacefully." Jennifer listened to Marcus's words, and for a moment she felt sorry for what she was doing. She could see that he was a good person who was just trying to travel, like any other passenger, but her pride would not let her admit that she was wrong. "Sir, I understand what you're saying," Jennifer replied. "I have rules to follow. I cannot let passengers sit in first class unless I am completely sure they belong there. But I have shown you my boarding pass, my driver's license, my credit card, and my airline loyalty card," Marcus said. "What more proof do you need?" Jennifer did not have a good answer to that question. She had asked for every type of proof she could think of, and Marcus had provided everything. She was running out of excuses. The captain's voice came over the airplane's speaker system. "Flight attendants, please prepare for departure. We need to close the cabin door in 5 minutes." Jennifer realized that she was holding up the entire flight. There were still passengers waiting to board, and she was blocking the aisle with this argument. She needed to make a decision quickly. "Sir, I am going to call my supervisor," Jennifer announced. "If there is a problem with your seat assignment, my supervisor will sort it out." Marcus felt relieved that Jennifer was finally going to get help from someone else. He hoped that her supervisor would be more reasonable and would end this embarrassing situation. "That sounds like a good idea," Marcus said. "I would be happy to speak with your supervisor." Jennifer walked to the front of the plane and picked up the airplane's phone. She called the gate desk and asked to speak with her supervisor, Mr. Peterson. "Mr. Peterson, this is Jennifer on Flight 447, she said into the phone. "I have a passenger in first class who I think might be in the wrong seat. He has documents, but I'm not sure if they're legitimate." Mr. Peterson was surprised by the call. "Jennifer, what kind of documents does he have?" "He has a boarding pass for seat 3B, a driver's license, a credit card, and an airline loyalty card. But I think he might have gotten these documents illegally." There was a long pause on the phone. Mr. Peterson could not believe what he was hearing. If a passenger had all of those documents, and they all matched, there was no reason to question his right to sit in first class. "Jennifer, if his boarding pass shows seat 3B, and his identification matches the name on the boarding pass, then he belongs in that seat. Why are you questioning this?" Jennifer felt her stomach drop. She could hear in Mr. Peterson's voice that she had made a serious mistake. But she was too scared to tell him the whole truth about what had happened. "I just wanted to be extra careful," Jennifer said weakly. "Jennifer, being careful is good, but harassing passengers is not acceptable. Let the man sit in his seat, and do not bother him again." Mr. Peterson hung up the phone, leaving Jennifer standing alone at the front of the plane. She knew she should go back to Marcus and apologize, but her pride would not let her do it. Instead, Jennifer decided to make the worst decision of her career. She was going to call airport security and have Marcus removed from the plane. She picked up the phone again and called the airport security office. "This is Jennifer Walsh on Flight 447 at Gate 15A. I need security officers to come to the plane immediately. I have an unruly passenger who is refusing to move to his correct seat." Marcus was still standing in the aisle, waiting patiently for Jennifer to return. He had no idea that she had just made a phone call that would change both of their lives forever. Other passengers were getting restless. They could see that something serious was happening, and they were worried about missing their flight to Chicago. The businessman in seat 4B called out to Marcus. "Sir, I want you to know that I saw everything that happened here. If you need witnesses to support your story, I will be happy to help you." Several other passengers nodded in agreement. They had all seen Jennifer treat Marcus unfairly, and they were ready to speak up for him if necessary. Marcus thanked them for their support, but he hoped it would not be needed. Still believed that this was all just a big misunderstanding. That would be cleared up soon. But as Jennifer walked back down the aisle with a grim expression on her face, Marcus could see that the situation was about to get much worse. Marcus stood in the airplane aisle, still holding his documents in his hands. He could see Jennifer walking back toward him with a strange look on her face. She did not look sorry or embarrassed like he had hoped. Instead, she looked determined and angry. "Sir, I have called airport security," Jennifer announced loudly. "They are coming to escort you off this airplane." The words hit Marcus like a lightning bolt. He could not believe what he was hearing. After showing Jennifer every piece of proof she had asked for, she was now having him arrested. "You called security?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with shock. In disbelief. "Why would you do that?" "I have shown you everything you asked for. I have done nothing wrong." The other passengers in first class were just as shocked as Marcus. The elderly woman in seat 3 gasped and put her hand over her mouth. The businessman in seat 4B stood up and shook his head in disgust. "This is absolutely unbelievable," the businessman said. "That man has been nothing but polite and respectful. He has shown you all his documents. Why are you having him arrested?" Jennifer tried to defend herself, but her voice was shaking. Security procedures. If I have doubts about a passenger, I have the right to call security. But you have no reason to have doubts, said the woman in seat 2A, who had been recording everything. He proved who he is. He proved he bought his ticket. What more do you want? More passengers throughout the airplane were starting to notice the commotion. People in economy class were standing up and trying to see what was happening in first class. Flight attendants from other sections of the plane were coming over to see why boarding had stopped. Marcus felt like he was living in a nightmare. In all his years of flying, nothing like this had ever happened to him. He had been discriminated against before, but never so publicly and never so cruelly. Jennifer, please think about what you are doing, Marcus said quietly. We're about to ruin my life over nothing. I have an important meeting tomorrow morning. If I miss this flight, I could lose my business. For a moment, Jennifer looked uncertain. She could see the pain in Marcus's eyes, and she could hear the anger in the other passengers' voices. But she had already called security, and she felt like she could not change her mind now. 2 airport security officers appeared at the airplane door. They were both large men wearing uniforms and carrying radios. Behind them came a woman in a business suit who looked very serious and professional. I'm Captain Sarah Martinez, the woman announced as she walked down the aisle. I am the pilot of this aircraft, and I was informed that there is a security situation on my plane. Captain Martinez had been flying for 15 years, and she had seen every kind of passenger problem imaginable. But when she reached row 3 and saw Marcus standing there with his documents in his hands, she immediately knew something was wrong. Marcus was clearly a well-dressed professional man who was not causing any trouble. He was not yelling or fighting or acting dangerous in any way. The only person who seemed upset was Jennifer, and all the other passengers looked angry at her, not at Marcus. What exactly is the problem here? Captain Martinez asked Jennifer. Jennifer tried to explain her side of the story, but it sounded weak and foolish, even to her own ears. This passenger is sitting in first class, but I don't think he belongs here. I think he might be using fake documents to get a free upgrade. Captain Martinez looked at Marcus with professional concern. Sir, may I see your boarding pass and identification? Marcus handed over his documents willingly. He was relieved that someone in authority was finally taking charge of the situation. Captain Martinez examined his boarding pass carefully then, looked at his driver's license and credit card. Mr. Williams, your documents appear to be completely legitimate, Captain Martinez said. Your boarding pass clearly shows seat 3B. Your identification matches. And I can see that you are a Gold Elite member of our airline. She turned to Jennifer with a stern expression. Ms. Walsh, can you explain to me why you called security on this passenger? Jennifer's face turned red with embarrassment. She knew she could not give a good answer to that question, but she tried anyway. I thought his documents might be fake. I was just being careful about airplane security. Captain Martinez pulled out her tablet and checked the passenger manifest for Flight 447. Marcus Williams was clearly listed in seat 3B. His ticket had been purchased 3 weeks ago with a valid credit card. Everything was completely normal and legal. Walsh. This passenger's seat assignment is correct, Captain Martinez said firmly. His documents are real. His ticket was purchased legitimately. There is absolutely no reason to question his right to sit in first class. The other passengers began clapping and cheering. They were happy that someone in authority was finally standing up for Marcus. It's the elderly woman. In seat 3A reached over and patted Marcus on the arm. I'm so sorry this happened to you, dear, she said kindly.
Oh, yeah.
You handled this situation with such dignity and grace. Captain Martinez turned to the security officers and spoke quietly with them. After looking at Marcus's documents themselves, the security officers agreed that there was no problem. They had been called to remove a dangerous passenger, but Marcus was clearly not dangerous at all. Sir, we apologize for this misunderstanding, one of the security officers said to Marcus. You are free to take your seat and enjoy your flight. But Captain Martinez was not finished. She asked Jennifer to step away from the passengers so they could talk privately. They walked to the front of the airplane, where other flight attendants and ground crew members were waiting. Jennifer, I need you to explain to me exactly what happened here, Captain Martinez said in a low, serious voice. Jennifer tried to make excuses, but the truth was becoming clear to everyone. She had seen a black man sitting in first class, and she had immediately assumed he did not belong there. She had no real evidence of any wrongdoing. She had simply made a racist assumption and then refused to admit her mistake. In my 15 years as a pilot, I have never seen such obvious discrimination, Captain Martinez said. You racially profiled a passenger, publicly humiliated him, and called security on him for no reason except the color of his skin. Jennifer tried to deny that race had anything to do with her actions, but everyone could see through her lies. The other flight attendants were shaking their heads in disgust. The ground crew members looked embarrassed to work for the same airline. Captain Martinez pulled out her phone and called the airline's regional headquarters. She spoke directly with the district manager and explained the entire situation. The manager was horrified by what he heard. Sarah, we cannot allow this kind of behavior from our employees, the manager said. This is exactly the kind of incident that destroys our company's reputation. We need to take immediate action. While Captain Martinez was on the phone, word about the incident was spreading through social media. The woman in seat 2A had posted her video online, and it was already being shared by hundreds of people. Comments were pouring in from viewers who were outraged by Jennifer's behavior. The airline's customer, the service department, was receiving angry phone calls and emails. News reporters were starting to call the company's media relations office. What had started as one flight, attendant's bad decision was becoming a public relations disaster for the entire airline. Captain Martinez finished her phone call and walked back to where Jennifer was waiting. The expression on the captain's face told Jennifer everything she needed to know. Her career with the airline was over. Jennifer, I have just spoken with our regional manager, Captain Martinez said. Your employment with this airline is terminated immediately. You will be escorted off this aircraft and will not be allowed to work any future flights. Jennifer's world collapsed in that moment. 8 years of work, gone in just a few minutes, all because she had let her prejudices and pride control her actions instead of doing her job properly, as security officers prepared to escort Jennifer off the plane. She looked back at Marcus one last time. He was sitting peacefully in seat 3B, reading a book and preparing for his flight. She realized that she had tried to destroy an innocent man's life over nothing more than her own fears and biases. The other passengers watched in silence as Jennifer was led away. They felt bad for her in a way, but they also knew that her actions had been completely unacceptable. Marcus had been treated terribly, and justice needed to be served. As the security officers escorted Jennifer Walsh off the airplane, a strange silence fell over the cabin. Passengers watched through the windows as she walked across the tarmac, carrying her small bag and looking completely defeated. Her 8-year career as a flight attendant was over. Everyone knew it was her own fault. Captain Sarah Martinez stood at the front of first class and addressed the passengers who had witnessed the terrible incident. Her voice was calm but filled with genuine concern. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to personally apologize for what just happened on this aircraft, she said. The behavior you witnessed from our flight attendant was completely unacceptable and does not represent the values of our airline. She walked over to Marcus, who was finally sitting in his seat but still looked shaken by everything that had happened. The captain's expression was kind but serious. Mr. Williams, I cannot express how sorry I am for the treatment you received today, Captain Martinez said. What happened to you was wrong on every level, and I want to make sure we do everything possible to make this right. Marcus looked up at the captain with tired eyes. The stress of the confrontation had drained him emotionally, and he was worried about how this delay might affect his important meeting in Chicago. Thank you, Captain, Marcus said quietly. I just want to get to Chicago so I can focus on my presentation tomorrow. This whole situation has been very upsetting. Captain Martinez nodded with understanding. I completely understand your frustration. But before we take off, I want you to know what steps we are taking to address this situation. She pulled out her tablet and showed Marcus some information on the screen. First, our airline is going to refund your entire ticket price, even though you will still fly to Chicago today. Second, we are upgrading your return flight to our premium first-class service at no charge. Marcus was surprised by the generous offer, but Captain Martinez was not finished. Additionally, she continued, Our company is providing you with 5 free round-trip tickets to any destination we serve. These tickets are valid for 2 years and can be used for business or personal travel." The other passengers in first class began clapping softly. They were happy to see that the airline was taking responsibility for what had happened and treating Marcus fairly. But Captain Martinez had even more to say. "Mr. Williams, our regional manager, would like to speak with you personally after your flight lands. We want to hear your full account of what happened so we can use this incident to improve our training programs." Marcus appreciated the airline's efforts to make things right, but he was still troubled by the bigger picture. "Captain, I'm grateful for what you're doing, but I have to ask, how often does this kind of thing happen? Are other passengers being treated badly because of their race?" It was a difficult question, but Captain Martinez answered honestly. "Fortunately, discrimination still happens in the airline industry, just like it happens in many other places. But incidents like this one help us identify problems and fix them." She paused and looked around at all the passengers who were listening. "What happened today will become part of our mandatory training program. Every flight attendant in our company will learn about this incident and understand why it was wrong." The elderly woman in seat 3A raised her hand to speak. "Captain, I want you to know that this young man handled himself with incredible dignity. He never raised his voice or became aggressive, even when he was being treated terribly." Her husband nodded in agreement. "We've been flying for 50 years, and we've never seen such grace under pressure. This man is a credit to his family and his community." Other passengers began sharing their thoughts as well. The businessman in seat 4B said, "I'm going to write a letter to your company's CEO praising Mr. Williams for his calm behavior and criticizing." "What happened to him?" The woman in seat 2A, who had recorded the incident on her phone, spoke up next. "I've already posted the video online, and thousands of people are sharing it. Everyone is supporting Mr. Williams and condemning what that flight attendant did." Captain Martinez was glad to hear that the public was responding positively to Marcus's dignified behavior. That's exactly the kind of response we hope to see. People should speak up when they witness discrimination. As the conversation continued, a new flight attendant arrived to replace Jennifer. Her name was Maria Santos, and she had been working for the airline for 12 years. She immediately went to Marcus's seat to introduce herself. "Mr. Williams, my name is Maria, and I will be taking care of first class for the rest of this flight," she said with a warm smile. "I heard about what happened, and I want you to know that Jennifer's behavior was absolutely wrong." Maria had actually requested to work this flight after hearing about the incident. She wanted to show Marcus that not all airline employees were like Jennifer. She was determined to provide him with the best possible service. "Is there anything special I can do to make your flight more comfortable?" Maria asked. "Something to drink before we take off?" Marcus smiled for the first time since boarding the plane. "Just some water would be great, thank you." As Maria brought Marcus his water, Captain Martinez made a final announcement to the entire airplane. Over the speaker system, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I want to address the incident that occurred during boarding today. Our airline has zero tolerance for discrimination of any kind. The employee involved has been terminated, and we are taking additional steps to ensure this never happens again." Her words were broadcast throughout the plane, so even passengers in economy class learned what had happened. Many of them began clapping to show their support for the airline's decision. The plane finally pushed back from the gate and began taxiing toward the runway. Marcus looked out his window and thought about everything that had happened. In just 1 hour, he had experienced the worst and best of human behavior. Jennifer Walsh's discrimination had been painful and humiliating, but the support he received from other passengers and the airline's leadership had restored his faith in justice. He realized that most people were good and would stand up for what was right when they saw something wrong as the plane took off into the cloudy sky. Marcus opened his laptop and began reviewing his presentation for the Chicago City Council. The incident on the plane had actually given him a new perspective on his architectural project. He was designing a community center for a diverse neighborhood in Chicago. The building was supposed to bring people from different backgrounds together. After what he had experienced today, Marcus understood even better how important it was to create spaces where everyone felt welcome and respected. 3 hours later, the plane landed safely in Chicago. As passengers prepared to leave, Many of them stopped to shake Marcus's hand and wish him good luck with his presentation. The elderly woman from seat 3A gave him a small piece of paper with her contact information. If you ever need character, REFERENCES for anything, please don't hesitate to call us, she said. You're a remarkable young man. Marcus walked off the plane, feeling tired but oddly grateful. The day had started with discrimination and humiliation, but it had ended with justice and human kindness. He had learned that there were still people in the world who would fight against prejudice when they saw it. The next morning, Marcus's presentation to the Chicago City Council went perfectly. He won the contract for his community center project, which would provide jobs for his employees and help him build his architectural firm into something bigger and better. But more importantly, Marcus had discovered something about himself. When faced with injustice, he had responded with dignity and strength. He had not let one person's hatred change who he was or how he treated others. Jennifer Walsh's 3 minutes of prejudice had cost her a career. But Marcus Williams's grace, under pressure, had earned him respect, success, the knowledge that he could handle anything life threw at him. Sometimes, the worst moments in life teach us the most important lessons about who we really are and what we're capable of achieving.